Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. This is Simon with AvaTrade. I want to welcome everyone to our webinar. And of course, as always, a special welcome goes to new people. This is our weekly plan webinar, and everything's pretty much covered in the title. What we do here is making a plan for the week. And as you know, not only in trading, but in everything in life, planning actually could potentially improve results. Definitely reduce the impulsiveness and chaos from our actions. Okay, a few things about myself. My name is Simon Friedman. I'm a senior account manager with AvaTrade. My trading career started in June of 2000 when I started as a prop trader back in New York City. And after 11 years of doing that, I moved to a different, less stressful way of trading. Trading is my passion. I really love it, and I'm very happy that currently have an opportunity to assist our customers at AvaTrade. The agenda of the webinar, we pretty much do the same. We'll talk about indices, stocks, commodities, forex, and also discuss a little bit of a big picture, some fundamentals, whatever it's important. We'll go over it. Risk warning, you can find a full statement at avatrade.com. Of course, we do not suggest any trades. Everything that's done here is for educational purposes only. Our channels, great source of information, education. You can find us at Telegram, Twitter, and as I always say, and I keep on saying, AvaTrade YouTube channel where you can see a lot of tutorials, a lot of educational material. And also, if you do miss any of our webinar, you can always go back. The webinars are being posted. I know some of you might be watching this on YouTube as well. And if you do, I highly suggest subscribing if you haven't done that yet. Click on the bell, you'll be notified for new things coming in. And it would be great to hear from you. You can write feedback, whatever you feel about the webinar. I'm constantly looking to improve things, so your feedback is very, very important. Okay, so before we go to economic calendar, just a little bit of summarizing the past month. So we finished the week, we finished the month, also we finished the quarter. So just want to give you some statistics here um, in regards to U.S. markets, as U.S. markets are pretty much the major players in the industry. So we had, first of all, Friday was a mixed day, a mixed session. Nasdaq managed to gain a little bit, about 0.1%, while Dow Jones dropped about 0.5%, and S&P dropped 0.3% for the day. And for September, there was big decline across the board. Nasdaq declined 5.8%, and it brings the quarterly decline to 4.1%. And it was probably one of the worst months for the tech index since December, so up to date on the year. And Dow Jones fell 3.5% on the month and 2.6% on the quarter. And on the weekly drop was 1.3%. And going to S&P 500, it was down 4.9% for the month and down 3.6% for the quarter. So as you could see, it wasn't such a positive month and quarter. We're entering the last quarter of the year, and we'll see what's next in the game for us. Also, I wanted to mention the VIX ended the week at 1752. Just to give you an idea, Wednesday we were almost at 20, and in the middle of the month we were as low as 1268, was the lowest in a long time. So it was a high volatility week. and a month, of course. So again, just to mention to new people, VIX, some people call it a fear index. It's pretty much a volatility of the S&P 500. Okay, so another big thing that just happened last night, as you know, we discussed one of the three fears that were affecting the market up till Saturday night when it was temporarily fixed. So the deal was done, a temporary deal, which extends the funding for another 45 days. So you can find, there's an article here, this from marketwatch.com I took it from. And it looks like, as they say, saved by the bell. And let's see what happens. So we have till mid-November the funding continuing to going, covering the expenses of the U.S. government. And there were some changes made. I think one of them was denying the military help or economic help to Ukraine. Again, I'm not going to judge that. I have my personal reasons there. So that's something that did happen. Now, let's see what will happen this upcoming week. And of course, the key event that or announcements, that's the non-farm payroll, which happens usually the first Friday of the month. So we'll get that in a moment. So starting today, we have a manufacturing PMI from China. We have also manufacturing index from Japan. We'll speak about Japan in a moment. I have another slide coming up. Monday, we have manufacturing PMI from US, and we have a speech of Powell as well. That's on Monday. Tuesday, interest rate decision from Australia, followed by the statement. We have inflation numbers or consumer price index from Switzerland, and that's on Tuesday as well. Wednesday, another interest rate decision with the statement from New Zealand, the neighboring country of Australia. So both of them are reporting this week. That's Tuesday for Australia, Wednesday for New Zealand. We have ADP employment change. That's another report prior to releasing the non-farm payroll. So that's on Wednesday as well. Service PMI from US, and we have President Lagarde speaking. That's President of European Central Bank, of course, speaking on Wednesday. So definitely worth watching Euro and DAX. Thursday, trade balances from Australia. And here comes the Friday when we have a bunch of employment data from US and Canada, both. So as expected here, if you could see here, we're expecting 158,000 jobs added. Last period, we had 187 added. And it doesn't show here. I'll explain in a moment why. We expect also small changes in unemployment rate. So just to make sure that I mention it, this is the economic, especially for new people. This is the economic calendar. This is public information that's being posted. It's accessible for everyone. You can find it on our web trader or the AvaGo app, or any provider. You can just Google whatever fits you. Here, I took out the high impact events only. As you could see, everything in red. There's so much more. You can filter through it. You can choose whatever is relevant to your trading, to the part of the world that you're involved in trading with. And that's it pretty much. Again, some people ask, is it important to follow it, to use it? It's all individual. Some people actually trade the events, others stay away from them. But either way you choose, it's important, I believe, to know that certain things are happening so you'll be prepared. Either be in the trade, not be in the trade, watch the trade, take an opportunity. knowledge is power, as you know. So if you know certain things are happening, you can actually have better idea or better understanding before you make any kind of decision. So definitely, I would recommend to follow these things and be aware ahead of time that certain things are happening, so you don't get caught in a move of the market or huge spike, and only later reading in the news that, I don't know, NFP report was bullish or bearish, or interest rate decision came out and so on, right? Like we had the week before, we had the surprise interest rate decision by Bank of England and Bank of Switzerland that were expected to raise the interest rate, but they didn't. And as a result, both currencies tanked pretty much, right? So it's important. Okay, so another thing that you can look into also at MarketWatch, this article talks about Japan. And if you coming to my webinars, I speak pretty much on each webinar, or every webinar, about the Japanese yen. And just to remind us that out of major central banks, Bank of Japan is the only one that hasn't done anything in raising the rates. So it's still at negative, minus 0.1%, when all the other banks are between 4 and 5% or 5.25% interest rate. So a few weeks back, I think it was 3 weeks or so, the governor of Bank of Japan said that they might start taking actions. And now, according to this article, they're not really rushing into it because it's good for stocks and so on. So you can read an article. But I will remind you about this when we get to Forex, and I'll mention the Japanese yen with certain ideas. Okay, so let's move to the trading terminal, this MT4, and let's see what happened. As we mentioned, we had a sell-off week and the month for all the indices. So here's let's go through a few indices really quick. So here's Nasdaq, as you could see, ended up a little bit on a positive day, weekly, and here comes monthly by the sell-off. So Dow Jones as well. So all the indices are down. Some are below the 200 moving average. That's, you see, the Dow Jones, and actually Dow Jones is the only one that's below the 200 moving average here, and both S&Ps and Nasdaq are above that. So as we mentioned, the main event of this week is the NFPs. So it's all the way at the end of the week, but we have few interest rate decisions. We have speech of Powell and other data. So let's see how this week starts. And also, we might see some kind of a positive effect. Actually, it's kind of a catch-22. It is kind of positive temporarily that they didn't really shut down the government as of today, but it's something, that it's like patching a leaking ceiling. They didn't really fix the problem. It just temporarily release, or relieve, that is 45 days long. So let's see what happens there. So we might see maybe initial positive move on the market, at least celebrating the avoidance of the issue, but then we're just back at the same issue again. So that's as far as indices. Let's see how this week will start. DAX had a nice move in the past 3 sessions. Actually, Friday was actually a strong day. It started to be, but then we went down and we didn't really hold below the 15,600, the level that I think we mentioned. In order for it to go higher, we should start really building support at the previous level around 15,600, where we have multiple supports. UK, the FTSE is closed below 200 moving average here. Also, we had the move up and then a sell-off towards the end of the day. Now let's take a look at China. And again, just to remind us, we've been talking about China pretty much every session. There was a big issue there politically and definitely economically, as one of the big issues with the AvaTrade real estate developer company when they defaulted on the debt. And there were some key executives arrested. And I guess things are not so great in that part of the world. So that's on China. So again, indices finished the month lower. We're starting a new month, new quarter. Also, we're starting the earnings season, and that definitely will contribute to the moves of individual stocks, which will definitely cause the moves in indices. So let's move to stocks actually on that note. So we spoke about a few stocks last week. I just want to go through them really quick. We spoke about Netflix, that it would retest the weekly support here at 379.15. We did go below it and we closed at 377. As we know, the market, as I always say, on the selling market, even the best stocks are going to sell, and on the running market, even the worst stocks are going to move higher. So that's your Netflix. Apple, again, I'm using Apple as an indication of what's happening, as Apple just recently was the first ever $3 trillion company. So here on Apple, it could be that we, at least in the weekly chart here, we kept on making, we just made another lower low over here. So it could be that Apple is starting to have some issues. I mean, we all know that, probably hear in the news. I didn't go deep into researching on Apple specifically, but I've heard few mentioning of the new phone, which is heating up. And also a lot of new owners of the phone were criticizing it. And the last thing I read, that this is not the hardware issue, it's the operating system issue. So the bug or something, they're probably trying to fix it. In any event, a key product, the iPhone, lately there were a lot of concerns and a little bit of pessimistic predictions. So the stock is selling. We were holding around 174, 175. We went this past week as low as 167.5. We closed at 171. So that's Apple. We spoke about Boeing, and the selling continues. And I went to look for some news, something that I found that they reached the agreement to pay a compensation or penalty of 8.1 million, which is nothing for Boeing, I think. And as you could see here, we had a day of indecision here. We had up and down. We closed and opened pretty much at the same price. Open and close within 10 cents difference, or 12 cents difference. And if you zoom out, just going to bring another chart which is not so crowded. What catches my attention here on the weekly chart, sorry, this is not it. Boeing right here is at the very interesting level here. So you could see around here, low of 191.72. That's what we made high from here, and a lot of actions around this level. Resistance, support. So between $191 and $192, we are probably looking at support. So that support, if it really holds, it could start possible or probable recovery of Boeing here. Now, another thing that sometimes I mention, in this case, it's on the weekly chart. It looks like we have something that worth mentioning, a golden cross when the 50 moving average is crossing about the 200 moving average. Usually they use it on the daily chart, but it shows now on weekly. And I'll show it to you. Sometimes it works when we get to gold. It was the opposite scenario that in any event, it looks like we are holding. This is the weekly chart, support, resistance, support. We reached that level. And we have a little bit of a positive evidence of possible reversal here as we are showing the golden cross. Again, that's the 50 moving average, about the 200 moving average here. Also, we spoke about banks on a regular basis pretty much. The banks are not really rushing into a recovery. They are showing a lot of weakness, all of them pretty much. And of course, a lot of it related to interest rates remaining higher for longer, and that was the last kind of idea that the traders got since the last FOMC meeting. And the banks are really sitting at these lows, even though some of the analysts were saying, yes, the banks are a little bit in trouble or whatever the wording was, but the stocks are cheap. So after that, there was a brief move here on Wednesday, but then we went right back. So a lot of pressure on the banking stocks. Okay, now a few things I want to show you. So this the stocks we just went through, definitely worth continue watching. We mentioned them last week, but a few more I want to show. Disney here, and Disney is, first of all, we're just retesting this level here on the monthly chart from March of 2020. This is the time of the beginning or the panic of the pandemic. The low here was $79, right? And on Wednesday, we hit the low of 79.12 and we bounced. So it could be that after this a long journey going south, which is down, we might be trying to bounce on Disney here. So let's try to see what can be done here. So we had a low here from which we made a higher high, and that was 79.66. Then we came back again this past week. We had a false breakdown and continuation to the upside on the falling market. So definitely worth watching Disney on a possible reversal here. Even if it's not going to run very high, but it could be potential of reaching the previous attempt or the high of 86. That's $5, not bad. Of course, the opposite scenario could be happening. We could be easily breaking down the 79 level and continue lower. But here you have a few attempts a monthly chart. That's why it's important to zoom out and see what happened in the past. So here back in 2014, we had a low of 79.66 and a low of 79 5 years later, 2020 March, and we're back again. So let's see if this time we managed to bounce again. So that's on Disney. Nike actually reported good earnings. The stock gapped up significantly, like $10, right? More than 10%. But then it given some of that move, closing at 95.65, still up $6 from the previous closing day. Right, so definitely we'll be watching Nike. Let's take a look at our TEVA. We mentioned it pretty much on a regular basis. As we said, there's a potential that the stock will break out of 11 and enter a new area of trading. As of now, we had a nice move. We hit 1070 here on the 20th of September. and we came to retest 10, and so far we're holding about 10. So let's see what happens there. Now, speaking of pharmaceuticals, we had a nice reversal candle here on Friday on Pfizer. And if you zoom out to the weekly chart, as you could see, this big move started also here with the 2 consecutive weeks pretty much on the same level. So this was 2021 February 21st. The low was 33.34. And another low was a little bit higher by 7 cents, 33.41. I just draw the line so we can see it visually. And the previous week we closed below, and now we're trying to recover there. So definitely around $33 we want to see. If Disney manages to break above that line and start building the support around that level, we might see actually continuation to the upside. And of course, the opposite scenario that will just confirm the new resistance, which was support, and the stock could continue looking for more solid supports. So that's on Pfizer. And let's wrap it up with Tesla. As we mentioned last week, the sales in China went down significantly. And I think October 2nd, the next report on the sales figures. So let's see what happens. But in any event, we mentioned the 240, which we heroically held. I don't know if you can apply that analogy. So 240 we held. We closed below on Wednesday briefly, and then Thursday and Friday was a nice move to the upside. And we are testing the 50 moving average. So we are 250, $10 above, which is a nice recovery here. So in any event, it looks like 240 is holding, and this is the number that we spoke about. Also, the analysts are mentioning this number 240 as a key number in the make it or break it. So that's as far as Tesla, right? Let's move to commodities, and we start with crude oil, which after making a new high on the year on 27, we hit 94.12. The following day, we had the fake breakout. We hit 95.02, and 2 days we were selling, ending up closing at 90.73. So what I'm thinking here, again, just thinking loud, this recent move stopped around 91.21. After that, we had a lot of fighting around this level, and only on Wednesday we broke above it, as I mentioned, and in 2 days we came right below. So roughly $91 we should be watching. If we are keeping below that number and start building some price action showing the resistance, we might actually slide lower and retest the lower levels. Of course, 90, could be 85, could be anything. It could be all the way to the 50 moving average, which is currently at 85. And if we manage to jump right back above that 91 and a quarter, let's say, and start building price actions above it, we might see higher levels. And as you know, we mentioned a few times that some analysts are predicting the price reaching 100. One of the people saying the same thing, it was the CEO of the Chevron. I think I mentioned to you last week, if I'm not mistaken, or I did it in my other webinar, I'm not sure. In any event, oil, we'll be watching oil, reacting to this 91 and a quarter level. With a huge fall on gold, huge. This week was a free fall on gold. Let's see. We had the high, it's easier to see on the weekly chart, I guess. You see this range, which is not the largest in history, but pretty large. So We had a range from the high of 1927 to the low of 1846. That's about $79, almost $80 move. And what I mentioned when I said I'll show you on gold, you see here the opposite scenario, even though it's a daily chart. I mentioned a few times that we had this dead cross when the 50 moving average moves below the 200. Some analysts using the classical technical analysis consider it as a signal for selling or confirmation for selling. And this time it looks like it worked. Right after that, we failed to break to the previous resistance. We had the huge tail here, and since then, after a few flat days, we just tanked. Right, so let's see if we manage to find some kind of support, or we might slide lower. I mean, we are below 1850, so if you use psychological orders, the 1800 could be the next level. The 200 moving average is currently around 1811, so we might see continuation. It was a really strong sell-off on the high volume, as you could see. As the sell-off continued, the volume increased as well. It shows that there was a kind of a panicky selling. Silver did pretty much the same thing. And gold, if you take take a look on the hourly chart, we actually had a nice hope here on Friday before the afternoon sell-off intensified. So that's gold. Let's take a look at natural gas. It's really fighting, trying to break out of this level here. We had an attempt to reach $3 or $3. We hit 299.5, and as you could see on the weekly chart, we are trying to break through the ceiling here. Let's see if we manage to do that. A lot of pressure and also a lot of desire to go higher. So we'll see if we manage to do anything this week. All right. Another instrument that really tanked, that was wheat. We speak about the soft commodities sometimes. Isn't it reminding a gold candle as well? It's funny. So wheat just tanked. Really don't know what to make out of it. It's a lot of aspects that's affecting it. Definitely the geopolitics with the war and shipping of the grains from Ukraine and other things. But technically speaking, we had a huge sell-off that closed at the lows. So let's see how this week, sometimes we have bounces after a huge move to the upside, also on the increased volume. If you look on the higher time frame, the monthly chart, it could be anything. We could be selling and testing the 500. We could be bouncing here. It's hard to predict anything. We're not in the business of predicting, of course. Soybeans as well reacted to the downside, not as strong as the wheat, but at least we have some kind of reference here. So on the weekly chart here, or the daily chart, we have a previous support here on May 31st at 1269.75. It's about $5 lower. So at least we have kind of a checkpoint here, unlike in wheat. Okay, so that's our commodities. Let's move to Forex. We'll start with dollar index. It's been super strong. I think Friday it was a little bit of correction there. Here's dollar index. All right. So with the nice recovery here, as I mentioned to you, this 105 level was broken to the upside. We are above all the moving averages, and we have a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks move to the upside, straight up. And a daily chart with the regular normal profit taking will keep on running here. Now, what we could be paying attention into this level, the previous high that was reached on March 8th, and the high here was 105.85. We're right there. We closed on Friday 105.83.5, a little bit below that. So Thursday was a sell-off after making a recent high. We closed below, and then Friday was a continuation of a sell-off, but super strong recovery here. So you could see here there was a sell-off. This is hourly chart, and then we came right back where we started. So we're pretty much sitting on this level, which was the resistance in beginning of March. So again, we'll be watching it now. In the opposite direction to gold, we have here the golden cross. Again, the 50 moving average above, which signifies the bullish mood. And it looks like it's working here. Let's see if we do see continuation here. Now on the monthly chart, you could see it clear here. If we are managed to start building things above 106, we might actually be on the way to retest the highs. As the major reason here is the Fed's keeping the rates higher longer than expected. That's not to say more. Okay, so that's US dollar. Now let's take a look at Swiss franc and pound, which were really weak the previous week. So we had let's go back to daily chart here. We had a nice move on dollar against Swiss franc, and similar move here. Here Thursday we sold, and Friday we had almost a flat day. And New Zealand dollar, sorry, that was the Swiss franc and the pound, which also, for the same reason as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the actions, or in this case, inaction or lack of action from the Bank of England and Bank of Switzerland, as priced in was the increase, but both of them didn't do anything. They didn't increase. They kept the rates the same way. So both currencies tanked. So as you could see here, pound had a big sell-off this week. It continued, and then Thursday and Friday was a little bit of recovery on the move down on the US dollar. So we'll be continue watching these currencies. Now, before I forget, if you remember a few weeks back, I mentioned to you the Swedish krona, and I mentioned to you two pairs with the euro, and this is the level. It worked out very nicely. We just hit the 200 moving average on the daily chart, so we might see the reversal, but the plan was nice. Again, I'm not showing off here. This is just something that we discussed together on the possibility of this move. And also USD SEK as well. This past week, after running higher, we did move below this 1109 level, and we had a nice continuation, almost hitting the 100 moving average. So we could continue watching these pairs, as we could watch also USD Hungarian forint. If you remember, I started talking about this pair based on fundamentals and politics in Hungary. It had nice moves since then. On the weekly chart, it looks very nicely. We are moving to the upside with corrections and making higher highs and higher lows. And on the monthly charts, the third consecutive month to the upside, we could continue. Or if we're coming down again, we just established the new level here around 161. There used to be a resistance starting here. And if we are continuing lower, some traders would consider coming in around 361 for possible buying opportunities here and taking it higher. So that's Hungarian forint. Now on the Swiss franc, I left Japanese yen for dessert, but so I just want to go through the pairs to do with the Swiss franc. It's definitely worth watching. Also Canadian dollar. So just want to show a few Canadian dollar pairs. As with oil prices cooling down, Canadian dollar cooled down as well. So we had a nice recovery on the pairs against Canadian dollar. You have Aussie, you have Euro, you have Pound, you have New Zealand dollar. All of them had a nice recovery, and here also CAD sold against the Swiss franc as well. So the CAD we'll be watching with the moves on the oil as they are related, as I mentioned almost every webinar, as Canada is the producer of oil and is sensitive to the oil prices, the local currency that is. And also we want to watch the pairs with the Swiss franc. We have pound, we have euro. Definitely we'll be watching what's next with the Swiss franc since the latest disappointment. Now coming to Bank of Japan. Again, I just want to remind you this slide. So 3 weeks ago, we had the governor speaking about it, saying that they might start doing things. Now they're really happy with the way things are because it helps the stock market. And let's take a look what Nikkei is doing. Nikkei has been doing well up till June. And since June, we're really ranging here. So you could see here. And it looks like we are making a lower highs, and we made a few lower lows here. So it looks like it's not so simple. And again, I always mention that Bank of Japan, they like to do things not secretly, but by surprise. So now we had two opposite opinions. First, they said they're looking to increase the rates because the inflation is affecting Japan. Now they're saying that cheap yen is really great. The stocks are doing great. But as I mentioned a few times, they need to buy all the commodities, and they are in dollars. So I think it's killing them, at least affecting them. You know, I'll take it away, take it back. Not killing them, but really affecting them in a negative way when they have to pay a lot more than they used to for the commodities that they purchase. So we could see that decision of Bank of Japan either sooner or maybe they'll just push it further. But in any event, definitely worth watching the pairs. Here's the Bank of Japan. The yen, dollar yen. Sorry, I just got stuck on Bank of Japan. So I just want to show you something on the weekly chart. It looks like we might see the deja vu here. So we reached this level back in October, exactly a year ago, maybe a week less. This is the weekly chart. So the week of October 9th of last year, 2022, we hit the high of 148.85. Then we had the spike that we took away the high of 150. So we hit 151.94, but we never had the closing there, right? So the highest closing actually in this run on the weekly chart, the highest weekly closing was 148.85. We are trading above it. So this move was 17%. So some analysts, actually that includes the article that I mentioned here. If you read it, it talks about it. I didn't really make it up, right? So they say that we might see a similar scenario here. This fall was 17%, talking about from 150 to all the way to 127.5. So we might see that move, right? Definitely worth watching. Now, if you take a look any other currencies against it, also they kind of stuck here, trying to move higher, but having a hard time. Pound, of course, Canadian dollar, the same thing, trying to retest those highs from last year. Similar idea. Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. So all major currencies are at those levels, or at least trying to get to those levels. So of course we could just break through and run, but how far can we run? How long can Bank of Japan stay inactive as far as increasing the rates? And that question only Bank of Japan can answer, and its governor, right? So that's it pretty much with currencies. And let's just take a quick look at Bitcoin, what Bitcoin is doing. Looks like we just made here a high low. It's not confirmed unless we break the previous high here. But we are trading about 27,000 after retesting briefly the 25,000 back in September 11 and 12. And we are above the 50 moving average. So let's see what happens in Bitcoin. I don't have any fundamentals to back it up with, but that's your currency, your cryptocurrency. Okay, so just to put it all together, we had a negative month and quarter for major indices. We had dollar moving higher, gold selling. We have ahead of us one of the most important events of the month, of each month. That's the NFPs, and of course that's one of the aspects. The employment data is one of the serious aspects that the Feds are paying attention to. And we have other things. We have interest rate decisions from Australia and New Zealand. We have some data from China, and we just had a temporary fix to the government crisis as far as financing the government in the US. So let's see how that develops. All right, I want to wish everyone a great weekend. We still have some of it left. Have some rest, gain some energy, enjoy it, prepare yourself for the week. And I want to wish everyone a very successful and productive week. And we should be back in a week. All the best. Take care.